What's up, you guys? Welcome back to church. Today's episode is about losing your voice at youth conferences. No, it's not. It's not. I just had to start there. This is Jason, for those wondering who this special guest is that sounds like, their voice got run over by a lawnmower. We had a youth conference this week, and it was awesome and powerful, and God was moving. And so it cost me my voice, man. You got to cheer your team on. You got to work hard. But we didn't want to leave you guys without an episode. So today we're going to talk about, not that losing my voice was one, but we're going to talk about mistakes. It's going to be a challenge. Maybe it's an appropriate episode for the voice kind of being crunched a little bit, because it's going to make me sound emotional the entire time. Like I'm just ready at a moment's notice to shed a tear. But mistakes are really challenging sometimes. I think they're really important. I think it's okay to fail. I think that's part of God filling the gaps. I think it's part of God leading, right? It is like you are going to be challenged in ways that are going to push you into things that you can't do on your own. And I think sometimes that mistakes that they happen in those areas, and that's totally okay. On the flip side of that, I think sometimes for me, I'll just talk about myself. I feel like I've turned my back on God a little bit, or told God, just 1 second, I think I got this one. Don't worry about it. And then really a flop, total failure, big mistake. So in those times, God has redeemed those things. I've prayed about it. It's a daily thing. You're going to make mistakes probably each day. It's just part of human nature. It's my least favorite part of human nature. Like, I'd like to be perfect, but it just isn't going to happen, and that's okay. So for anybody out there that's made mistakes, this podcast is for you. I hope this edifies you. I hope it challenges you. We're just going to be real and talk about it. Warren, what are mistakes for you, man? Like what kind of, not what are mistakes? You don't have to list all of them, because that would just be, for me, that would just be an endless podcast of like, well, here was last Tuesday. Here was,
right?
That's right. But how do you feel about it?
Man, mistakes. Ooh. So I can tell you, I've grown in my understanding and my comprehension of what a mistake is, why mistakes exist, and how we're supposed to process them. So for me, mistakes mean you're doing something, right? Because if you're not doing anything, you're not making any mistakes, right? And so life is for the living. It's not just for the existing or for just sitting on the sidelines. So if you're in life and you're moving life forward, there will be mistakes, right? So the one thing I've learned is to not be afraid of mistakes, because if I'm not making them, it probably means I'm not doing anything, right? I'm not moving toward the goal that God has for me. I'm not moving my life forward. I'm just stagnant, and I'm on the sidelines afraid of doing anything, right?
It's real. Yeah, that's real.
That doesn't give me a free pass to go out there and be reckless and do a bunch of crazy stuff, right? But for me, mistakes are speed bumps to direct me back to the heart of Christ, to direct me back to understanding that I'm a sinner saved by grace. It balances my equilibrium of thinking that I have it all together, or that I've made it to a certain destination. Mistakes have a way of humbling you if you pay attention to them. And so for me, mistakes are kind of like the little keys on the map of life. If you pay attention to them, it will direct you toward the right path. If you just keep following the mistakes, then you may just be on the wrong path, right? Like you go straight to them, right? And so I think it's something that we want to eradicate from our life. We don't want to make mistakes. But here's the thing. We're not perfect. Only God is, right? And so we pay attention to the lessons that God is teaching us through the things that happen through our life. And so for me, mistakes are to be examined. They are to be learned from, but they don't come into our life to define our life. So I've had some pretty big, colossal mistakes in my life. I think most people have, right? But there are levels to the mistakes. And I'll just talk about personal mistakes, right? They're just things that just they stand out to people. One big thing, I've never been, by the grace of God, I've never been arrested. But
hey, come on. That's
Hey,
awesome. Yeah.
I've never been arrested before, but if you've ever been arrested, that's something that kind of sticks with you. It creates a record, right? It
Yeah.
kind of lingers on your life, right? There's just certain things you can do in life, mistakes you can make that will just stay with you because of the way society works, right?
Mm,
And so I just want to take a minute in the kind of the introductory of what we're talking about and to speak to those people who you may have just stumbled on this podcast because, you saw mistakes and you was like, yeah, I got a couple of those, right? I just want to speak into your heart just for a second and remind you that we all make mistakes, and some people's mistakes are more visible than others, right? It doesn't make you worse or better than anybody else. The truth is, God forgives all sin. Like,
yeah.
if you come to him, right, he is faithful and just to forgive you of your sin, to wash you clean of that sin. And so if there's some mistakes that are haunting your life, you have a record, right? And you feel like you're not worthy of forgiveness, or you're not worthy of moving past those mistakes, that's a lie from the enemy. And I call it out right now. Surrender your life to Christ. We, we are not, we are not our mistakes. We are not our mistakes.
Right.
We're not what we do. We are what
Yeah.
he has created. And so he's created you to be his masterpiece. And so no longer live under the label of convent or divorcee or
Mm,
failure or liar, cheater. Don't live under the label of that. Live under the label of child of God, forgiven,
that's right.
redeemed, second chance, the best is yet to come. Those are the labels that God wants to put in your life. And that's the reason that Jesus came. He came so that we may have life and have it more abundantly. But that life begins when we turn to him and ask him for forgiveness of our sins. So for
Yeah.
me, mistakes are directional pieces in our life that help us grow. We can't avoid them, but what we can do is we can learn from them and do our best to not repeat them. And when we do repeat them, we have access to a God who forgives us and he helps us along our way. And so
Yeah.
for me, Jason, that's
That's good.
the beginning of what I'm talking about with mistakes, man.
Yeah. No, for me, that's the biggest challenge with mistakes is that I think I know that God takes care of them, removes them, reveals them, like really illuminates and can just rip them away from kind of the part of your life that you feel like it's metastasizing or just getting infected and defining who you are negatively. I
Yeah.
know God can do that. The challenge that we face, I think some of those things, like when I think about mistakes that some people have made, sometimes we understand God can take away the finality of those things in terms of it being permanent and like, let's say the ultimate punishment is not going to heaven, right? Like God rejecting you or something. There's no mistake you can make where you can't repent and get God to save you. And Jesus died for that. It's awesome. The challenge we face is sometimes in real life, like you were talking about societally speaking, sometimes in life, we have to deal with the real practical consequences of that.
Yeah.
And so this maybe is the only like, I don't know, warning for people is like, you can't watch us talk about mistakes and then think, well, okay, it's okay to make them on purpose, like Warren was saying. I think it's on every person to be reasonable, to challenge yourself to be better, not purposely make mistakes, but if you do, God will take those things away. But one of the best examples I could think of is like, people talk about or joke about, or it's not a joke, but people make the joke like, you're in the club on Saturday and in church on Sunday. Well,
Yeah.
but if you're consciously doing that, like this is you choosing where you go and who you relate with and who you hang out with. If that's the choice you're making, then God can remove the guilt of those things. But let's say you're out there and you take a young lady home, you get her pregnant. That's yours to live with for 18 plus years, hopefully for forever. Take responsibility for those things, right?
Yeah.
If you go out and you're drinking and you crash the car and you kill someone else or kill yourself, whatever it is, that's a permanent mistake.
Yeah.
So God can remove those things, like the pain of those things, the permanence that those things seem to have in terms of eternal consequence, but sometimes, and I think practically speaking, it's rational to believe like you may go to jail.
Yeah.
Right. Or you may have to take care of a human being that you helped create that you didn't plan for.
Mhm.
So that's the one thing that we need to be clear about is mistakes, unplanned things, or choices you make that result in plans that you didn't plan to have happen.
Yeah.
Right. All of those things, you have to be realistic with yourself. And that's why, like what Warren was saying, seek God, like build a relationship with God. That would be the biggest and first mistake is having no relationship with God. Right. So when I thought about mistakes for this episode, it was really two categories. It was personal mistakes I've made that impact me. And then it was relational mistakes where that's relationships with other people. Maybe it's with jobs, corporations, you could do something. Hey, look, if you're a freedom fighter, you have a relationship with a government that you're fighting against. If you are pushing back against God, you're doing something to your relationship with God.
Yeah.
So relational is just you relating to any other thing. Personal is like you've set a goal for yourself, you didn't achieve it. And so in some ways, those are like self-centered, maybe a little selfish or like self-focused. Let me say, I don't think it's always negative to say, I want to be healthier. Right. It's not always negative to say, I'd like to learn more about a topic.
Yeah.
But I think the mistake in those things could be taking this healthy thing and making it the focus of your life and not God. And so that's why I brought it up that way, is the relationship with the God who loves you, the creator of the universe, the being that knows everything about you, what you will do, what you will choose. That's the thing to lean into to avoid, I would say tragic, or it will help you avoid some tragic and major decision-making mistakes. So that's what I thought of as you were talking. Like I hadn't even planned to talk about that, but I don't want anybody to think like whenever we make an episode, I don't ever want it to feel like this is we're building a Christian podcast as a confessional. We're like, once you listen to this podcast, now we've given you tools to be free from all these things. That's not how life works.
Nope.
So what we're doing is trying to be real and talk about things that we really go through. That's I just want to make sure we were clear about that. So for me, the best way I have found to avoid some of the personal mistakes that I don't want to make is when I lean into God. It does flesh some of those things out. It does get rid of some of those things and kind of flush them from my life. And it's awesome. It replaces it with his peace, his joy, his understanding, because there's things that like I could think about things I have next week. I could think about things last week that I don't really understand, but God understands and is working through those things.
Yeah.
So trust God about it. And I it's funny. We could have waited till the end of the episode to be like, that's the secret. This is the secret sauce. And it always is. I think trusting God and building a relationship with God, right? It's always the secret sauce. But I want to start there.
Yeah.
Before we start talking about mistakes and it ends up just being an episode where everybody's like, well, gosh, you're just beating up, everybody that's done this thing that you've done. Or like if we list all these things, it's not about that at all. To me, maybe this is like, let's talk about some of ours, or what does it even look like for us? We don't have to get like so deep in the muck, but what does it look like to have a God who loves you and frees you from some of those mistakes?
Yeah.
That's the first question everyone listening to this pod should answer.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can listen in. You can continue listening and see what we've done, how we kind of advise you to move, or like what we say. But like all of that aside, it's about a God who loves you more than you can imagine and wants you to feel free from the guilt, the shame, the redefinition of who you are from what he says you are by the mistakes. You do not need to be redefined by your mistakes. They do not need to be permanent. But again, maybe sometimes we face real world practical consequences for choices that we make. So anywho, that was it. I didn't want to give like too much freedom without context. That's like that's a really dangerous thing. The truth is that feels like if you're like, God will free you from every mistake, that feels like a lie by omission, right? Because free you from every mistake might leave somebody with the impression like, and there will be no consequences, and you will just prosper, and there will be no challenge. Well, that's not the life God called us to at all. In fact, look at the life of Jesus. It was challenge after challenge after challenge in human form that he overcame because of faith in God. Right? Even he talks about himself. I mean, he talks about the Father, his relationship with God. And anyways, I just think it's beautiful. It's wonderful. If we have the same opportunity, is my point. Relationship with God will set your mind right for the challenges of this life that lead to mistakes. So
good.
Warren, I did not leave you with much of a platform to jump off of there. And that,
you left
that
me.
caveat.
You did leave,
but like,
you did leave some meat on the bone there. You left a little meat on the bone there.
Good.
Practically,
okay. Good,
right?
Go ahead.
I love where we're at with mistakes, right? Like let's get the main thing. Let's talk about the main thing and then flow into kind of like where we're at with that. And so as you were talking, right, I just kind of remember, I love the heart of God. And I'm one of those. I'm high energy, super inspirational, right? But my kids know, don't test me. Like
now you're about to
don't
preach.
cross me. Like,
come on.
like where did this smile go? Like, so when I was a little boy, right, I did not understand this concept at all. Like, my dad believed in corporal punishment. I grew up in Houston, Texas. Yes. Right. And so spare the rod, spoil the child. I mean, come on. I think he lived by that, right? So I didn't. So there would be times where I would get, we didn't get spankings. We got whoopings, right? When I would get a whooping for something I did, right? And then 5 minutes after the whooping, my dad's like, "We're good. Let's go play basketball.
Yeah.
Let's go wrestle." And I'm like, I don't want to. I just want to, it's like, it's over. And I remember one time, he explained to me, he was like, after this is over, you're done.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I'm not going to continue talking about the mistake you made. You don't have to pay for it again. Nobody's going to bring it up. It's done. Let's move forward.
Yeah.
And so the difference between the way the world treats you when you make a mistake and you pay a consequence for it, and the way God treats you, and there are consequences for your actions. Like God holds us accountable. It's not just, oh yeah, forget. Like, there will be a price to pay for it, right? But think about it.
For sure.
Whatever that lesson you have to learn is, and whatever the consequence you face for it, when God forgives you, he doesn't even remember it. Like, it's not like there's a aftertaste of what you've done. Unlike on earth, right? There's an aftertaste of who you are, what you've done. Make a public mistake and you will be defined by that. God doesn't define you by that. And so, as I grew up in my relationship with God, I'd be like, I understood. And as I became a father, I understood that it was so important that as I, was raising my children and I'd have to discipline them, and to be clear, I don't whoop my children anymore. Not play. My boys would be like, what?
Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah.
What? So when I would discipline them, right, it was important that they understood that was a correctional tool or a consequence of what they had did. It does not change their status. It doesn't change my love for them or their access to me. Right.
Yeah.
In that position. And so I don't want to leave people like, with too high or too low. I just want to leave you right in the truth, right? The truth is that when we make mistakes and we go against the will of God, there will be consequences. But the sum total is that God's not mad at you.
Yeah.
God doesn't hate you. God does not hold things against you. Yes, there's a consequence, but God's not in heaven like, pointing his finger at you. He's not that, now
Thank goodness.
He does have a wrath, right? But he doesn't want to destroy you. He doesn't want to annihilate you. But we do as humans. Like, I've been guilty of it. People have done me wrong and I'm like, hey, you know what? You're done. We make that mistake, but we're not God, right? And one of my prayers is to love people the way God loves me, right? To be able to forgive, to be able to move forward, to be able to to get past things that have been done, right? And to
Yeah.
also receive that same grace from people. So I think that's important to kind of highlight, because I don't want people to think that God's just this, all forgiving, no accountability. That's not what it is. Or all this doom and, God just wants to, if you make one mistake, it's done. That's just not what it is, right? The truth is, God is love, but he is also a God to be feared. He's a God that I don't want to cross.
That's real.
You
Come
know,
on. Yeah.
gonna be
Yeah.
straight up with you. You know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
fear of God is a real thing.
Sure.
And so it's a healthy thing, right? But God's not trying to destroy me. He has plans for my life. He has a purpose for my life, and he has a purpose for you in your life. And so that's kind of where I want to
It's really
segue that piece off into. Very important and very good, Jason. Thank you for pointing that out and leading us in that conversation, man. That's I think it's so vital that be said today,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's real. Like, consequences are real. I think that's the challenge. So in thinking about the first category that I had were personal mistakes. It's like personal challenges, goals
Mhm.
for yourself. Be it, I mean, the first thing I think of almost all the time is one of my biggest struggles is health, right? Like eating healthy, maintaining physical fitness, sleeping well,
Mhm.
all those things, like drinking enough water,
Mhm.
all the things that are like, I kind of put those aside when I'm working on other things.
Yeah.
And I know that they're mistakes, but if I let them define how I'm moving in the world, then it will hurt my impact on the world.
Mhm.
Now I need to attack those things. I need to set goals and try to achieve them. And, but mistakes along the way, right? Like at some point, and I think it's kind of an interesting thing, mistakes in terms of personal mistakes. I'm challenged by maybe what you think by this. What is the difference between like I'm deciding not to do something versus I made a mistake? To me, I think mistake is this kind of interesting thing where sometimes it can impact us more because we maybe don't choose it. Like if I make a decision to eat a piece of cake, that's a decision I made.
Mhm.
It wasn't a mistake. Typically, I don't have like pieces of chocolate cake falling into my mouth on accident,
Mhm.
right? Or mistakenly eat a piece of chocolate cake because you thought it was a salad or something like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
those are not mistakes that you make accidentally typically. But sometimes mistakes that are like that, those personal mistakes, like I missed a question on a quiz, or I was studying for the LSATs and I missed so many questions that I don't want to, but now I'm like, can't be a lawyer or a doctor, or we have all these things in life where like you set the bar for yourself. And I think about athletic pursuits, right? You can make or miss. If you're really good at basketball, you miss 50% of your shots. I guarantee that that's not the goal.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like to me, that's the sliding scale is like, is missing a mistake? I think sometimes the bigger mistake would be not taking the shot.
Come on.
If you have a good shot, like that mistake is just not taking it.
Mhm.
The outcome is kind of out of your hands a little bit. But that's the thing is like, man, do you remember that car accident that you accidentally got into?
Mhm.
Right? Do you remember that time that you hurt somebody's feelings with the words you said when you got caught up at the party and you're all having a good time laughing together?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, do you remember that test that you really needed an A on and got a B?
Mhm.
Do you remember that relationship that you didn't mean to damage, but you just forgot to call?
Mhm.
That's the challenge, right? Like human nature is filled with these mistakes, and the personal ones, I think sometimes we can carry so much, but ironically, they end up hurting the relational, which I think are the more important, but maybe more avoidable mistakes. Like I can make a decision to make sure I make it a priority to call somebody.
Mhm.
Now, if you forget, like that's a mistake. Like you really didn't remember, like, oh man, I got busy.
Mhm.
I promise. But the truth is, at some point, if you do that, then I think it moves from like a mistake to a decision, right? Like if you're continuing to make the mistake, at some point, something's not a priority.
Yeah.
And so that's where we have to be really careful not to be burdened by personal mistakes. But man, maybe we should allow ourselves to be a little burdened by personal decisions. Like if it's a mistake over and over again, that's where you have a chance. Like you have a chance to fix those things before it becomes a mistake relationally. Like they don't have to then flesh themselves out into damaging relationships, right? But don't make the mistake of ignoring a problem. You have something personal going on, you're upset with something. So if I'm upset, right, and I'm about to get in front of a group of students, and they say something that sets me off, that is not necessarily their fault what my reaction is. That was a personal mistake I made in not noticing that I'm, what would you say, like cranky that morning or something like that. Like I need to acknowledge that. I need to take that in and make sure that I don't then damage the relational aspects of my life. And those mistakes where I promise, like I don't intend to hurt my relationship with that friend from church. I don't intend to hurt a student's feelings or these kind of things. And like those relational mistakes that you make, man, like that, those can speak way louder.
Come on.
And so I think it's conquering the personal, kind of like allowing God to take away that guilt from personal mistakes or even just choices you made that you realize now are a mistake. Right? Like I think sometimes you make decisions and you don't see the consequences or it's interesting. You can make conscious decisions for like years within a relationship, right? With any person, a friend, a son or daughter, a wife, husband, or whatever it is. You can make like years of like decision-making mistakes. You know what you said when you said it. But interestingly, you can realize after a decade, that was a mistake. I didn't realize how much I was hurting that relationship. In the moment, it made me feel good to say what I said. 10 years later, and you're alone,
damage.
It doesn't feel good anymore, right?
Yeah.
Or 10 years later, let's say it this way, let's not be defeatist. 10 years later, you got to sit before that person and be like, I'm so sorry I was that, but I'm working on being this. That's really hard. And that's a mistake you made because I would argue you didn't plan to do those things.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm being relatively vague so that this can apply to like
a lot of
many people.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm trying to hit on like also things that I've done. Man, like words matter so much. And here's what I would say. I make choices with my words sometimes that are not good, like sarcasm or anger, like whatever those things are.
Yeah.
That is a mistake to not that in what I'm saying, it's not an accident, but it's a mistake to realize or not realize how damaging that can be.
Yeah.
So I think the mistake is in realizing the outcome or not acknowledging the outcome. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's where personal mistakes, like again, it all comes back to relationship with God. Personal mistakes can't weigh you down. Like you can't let it destroy your ability to pour into someone else's life.
Come on.
So
come on.
Hit it, Warren. What do you think, man?
Man, let me unpack this for a second. So you said something that caught my attention, right? So I'm a recovering Krispy Kreme donut connoisseur.
I hear
right?
you. Yeah,
so I don't pass. So I enjoy cake, donuts, pies, all that good stuff, right? And so man. as I've gotten, a little bit older, I'm still quite young. I've had to realize, I got to a point in my life where I realized that I've been making the mistake of trying to mold myself into something that I wasn't designed to be. Right. So I made this mistake, right? Like I made this mistake that God gave me this life to not only bring him glory, but he also wants me to enjoy the time that he's given me. He's given me all these different blessings to be able to share with other people to be able to
Yeah.
share his love. And if I am not completely 100% being authentic with who he's made me to be, then I'm off. I can't effectively do what I was called to do for him. Right.
That's real.
And so
Yeah.
he's put this desire inside of me that I like cake. You know, I've been with myself for a long time and I like cake, you know. The problem is, here's the thing. I can't have cake all the time. I can't. It's just, it's a bad decision. Like you were saying, it's become a pattern. And if I just had cake every day, it's a bad deal, you know, because I have Texas sized pieces of cake. Texas cake, you know, not thin, just, you know, it's wide. You know?
When you said that, I was like imagining Texas shaped pieces of cake too.
Yeah.
Like an actual like Texas cake. I like to get
hey, I'm just being real, you know, real people, real problems here, right? So
that's real.
I have healthy, you know, pieces of cake, right? So I can't have them all the time. But I've had periods in my life where I said, hey, cake's not good for me. If I eat cake, I'm gonna cut years off of my life. I attach so much guilt to having cake, and I love cake, right? And when I boil it down to, cake is here for me to enjoy. Not all the time, but sometimes, special occasions. After I've completed, you know, and I'm a kind of person, I work out, and I got to the point where every time I had cake, I would be eating it, but I wouldn't enjoy it because I would feel like the cake was the mistake. And it's the thing that God put here for me to enjoy. Not all the time, but when I have it, I should enjoy it. I shouldn't feel like it's a mistake. Right. And so often we make the decision in our life that things that if it doesn't fit what the world tells us it should fit, we shouldn't enjoy it. And people have done that with all kinds of things in life. You know, I shouldn't have this because it's going to add to my waistline, or it shouldn't do this. And it's something that God has put down here for you to enjoy. But, and I'm not talking about like, you know right from wrong, right? You know, and if cake affects you and you have disease or something that affects, right? You probably shouldn't have those things. But if you're a healthy person and it's just because you have this ideal weight that you'll never reach, right? even the most leanest bodybuilder, you know, they never reach this goal. It's always in front of them, right? If you feel guilty about having cake, then you've kind of created your own mistake, and you've kind of put yourself in this prism of you've kind of created these own guilty pleasures, as we call them, right? So I had to reframe what really is a mistake. A mistake is going down and creating a habit. Do something once, you know, do something twice, you create a habit, right? So if you're continually doing the same thing, you will create it. You're making a decision. And so I've had to reframe some things in my life that are good, but too much of anything in life can be bad for you. So I've just had to redesign what I've kind of put as a mistake. And I've had to give myself an understanding of, look, I can't take this thing I can't take it overly seriously. I can't.
Yeah.
I cannot. Right? If I miss a day at the gym, I need to count it as an off day instead of a failure for the day.
Right.
You know, like maybe my body's telling me I need rest, not, man, I didn't go to the gym today. Like, forgive yourself and move on. Like, matter of fact, there's really nothing to forgive yourself too. Like, who said you needed to go to the gym 5 days a week? You set that standard.
You said that.
You know, like, so sometimes we live, when it comes to personally, right? We've put these expectations on ourselves that when we set them, we knew we couldn't achieve them. We need a miracle to achieve them, right? And then when we fail at it, it sets us back from just maintaining what we can achieve. And so just the idea of what a mistake is can just have your life in a pattern of just turmoil, because your expectations are unrealistic of what you can do. There's no room for you to grow because you've set the expectations so high that you're just going to spend the next 5 or 6 years just trying to meet your own expectations and God's like, yeah, I'm not into that. You know? And so I've had to personally, for myself, evaluate my expectations of what I expect me to do. You know, I can't be like, I'm gonna change me. I don't like cake anymore. I tried that. You know, It was like, went a couple years, no cake. And then, man, one day I had a relapse and it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a balance of proper expectations in my life. Right. And so now I can look at things that I enjoy and be like, I can't have that every day.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. That's
What's up?
so
Good?
man, what happened there?
I don't know. You're good. You're good. We still got it. That's funny.
That is
As we're
funny.
recording
That's a mistake.
the mistakes episode, we had a little mistake. We might have to leave that in, man.
We leave it?
That's really funny. Leave it, man. You good?
Oh, there we go. And I had a cough.
Yeah.
Leave it in.
You're good. No, come on.
Yes, I've just had to just kind of redefine my whole mindset of what a mistake really is and how it works.
It's good. Yeah. What I heard too is that it's not really what the mistake is or isn't. To me, it's almost like redefining the level of impact that it has on your future as well. Like what it's actually doing to, I don't know, damage your future.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels very mega. That's funny.
Yeah.
Getting a phone call during the pod, all kinds of stuff. Dude, this is wild. This is like on a mistakes episode. Yeah. So I'm gonna send that to voicemail real quick. The truth is, I want to leave these in because this feels like a hilarious, like, what are the odds of this, bro? We'll have to talk about that afterwards. But yeah,
I'm choking.
No, you're good. Like, you know what we should do is do like this is like a compilation of mistakes when podcasting. That's really funny. No, in all seriousness, I think sometimes it's like measuring the impact.
Yeah.
Like whatever the mistake is, whatever the kind of practical application for your life might be in terms of what, like the damage. I think I said that before, like the damage you're doing to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think we over exaggerate the damage that personal mistakes make.
Come on.
Right? But then what happens is we're underestimating the damage that's doing relationally. Right? So if I'm frustrated by something that's like small.
Yep.
And then my kids want to hang out with me or, we want to go out with friends that night or, shoot, let's be awesome. I have a date with my wife that night. Yeah. We're out here cooking. Nope. All of a sudden, like it's a challenge because I'm busy thinking about this, molehill that I turned into a mountain.
Yep.
This little mistake that I let just seep in and damage the time I'm spending with my wife, damage the impact we could have in terms of our time together and just like the great memory you can build. It gets damaged by the kind of overwhelm that's, I think sometimes we paint on these little mistakes, right? So I'll go back to your cake example. You eat that piece of cake. We're not saying like cake is always a mistake. In fact, what if it is? Let's say eating cake is a mistake every time, right? It is not you just set yourself back a year in your workout plan. You didn't just become like a gross, terrible human being. You're not like doing something evil. It was a piece of cake that, by the way, if you're really feeling super guilty about it, like go do 100 push-ups. Like, it's like, if you really want to do it, just like start burning the calories right away.
Yeah.
It's not hugely damaging, but what it could do, I'm just trying to extend this metaphor as far as we can. Warren, there you are, man. You eat that cake and you're at a birthday party. The rest of the party, God could use you to impact other people in your life. God could use you to be like, his joy, his peace for somebody else when they have problems. But man, all you're thinking about is like, I shouldn't have had that cake.
Yep. Perfect.
That's all you're thinking about. You're just overwhelmed by like that piece of cake, man. I'm gonna have to go home and now I got to change my whole diet tomorrow. And oh my goodness, like all these things. And we just let it overwhelm us. It's like, but do you trust God? Like, look, let's acknowledge the cake was a mistake. Do you trust God that he's going to like take that? Like, is that too much for God? Like that piece of cake or that thing you said, right? That thing you said when you shouldn't have, that text message that you sent out of anger. God can't overcome that. Now you got to burn the calories off.
Yeah.
You got to apologize for the text. You got to go do the push-ups. You have got to make the relationship right. You've got to make a choice. You go in the bathroom at that party, right? Where you're overwhelmed thinking about that cake, put a little water on your face, realize it's not the end of the world, and then go impact somebody else's life positively. And it ends up being a good party.
Yeah.
Or you can let that thing impact you for days and days. I'm terrible. I can't even keep up my own plan. And by the way, that's where it snowballs the wrong direction, right? you start telling yourself lies, right? You eat one piece of cake, you're an unhealthy slob.
Yep.
That little voice is like, what?
Yep.
Hold on. But nobody would say, even you wouldn't say that
Yep.
to you. Like that, let Satan get his hooks in, man.
Yep.
It's terrible.
And it's
so
off to the
it's
races.
measuring the impact. Yeah, it's measuring the impact. Like, I think that's the key. That's the way to conquer. That's the way to conquer these personal mistakes, is realizing their impact is so minimized by God's grace.
Yeah.
That's how you really minimize them, is like, who does God say you are?
Ooh.
Who does God say you are in the Bible? Who does Jesus use his words, his life that he gave for you? How valuable does that make you?
So good.
It makes you way more valuable than a cake eating slob.
Ooh.
Right? Because I got to tell you, princes and princesses in the kingdom, they're allowed to eat a piece of cake.
Come on.
Nobody's going to challenge them like that. But it's up to the prince to realize that, man, cake, that's probably not the best choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's these things. It's this sliding scale of, like we talked about, if you eat 100 pieces of cake, it has real life consequences. It doesn't have permanent consequences unless you allow it to seep in deeper. So what is the impact you're allowing your mistakes to have? That's the real rub of today's episode, because it's not mistakes that are the problem. That's the start. It's the impact of mistakes that really is the topic for more investigation. And you got to be honest with you. So, like, Warren, what ways have you let the impact of your mistakes change what you do, change how you move?
Man,
for me, right, it's changed some of the ways I move. And so that's what we all have to dive into. What do you think, man? How about you?
So for me, a big one, and I know a lot of people struggle with this one, is the mistake of not meeting someone else's standard, or not meeting the standard at whatever it is. It could be on your job, it could be in a relationship, and not letting the mistake of not meeting the standard is not the problem, because you can always improve and get better. It's what the mistake does to you psychologically. It's how you react to the mistake, both in your mind and both physically, right? Because you ever been doing something and you didn't make the basketball team. And so what you did was you took your basketball and you threw it away. You may have been this close to getting on the basketball team, but you had to wait a year and you had to work harder and you had to improve. But instead of doing that, you threw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, wow, I'm done. Like, I quit. I walk away. And so for me, not meeting expectations and what that does to me mentally, and what it does and what I do physically responding to that mistake. You know, this is kind of what you were talking about. Like, what is the mistake? How does it impact you, and how does it impact others? By blowing things out of proportion. It's not like, you know, I've been a dad for a long time, and I've come home from work and the house be like, I did not tell you to clean your room. And then I go from 0, you know, to like 100, and it wasn't even worth it. Right. Their mistake of not cleaning the room could be fixed by me saying, okay, you didn't do it now. But instead,
go ahead and do
it.
Yeah.
It took me to a whole different realm, right? The grass isn't cut, or, you know, whatever little thing happens in our life, road rage. I don't suffer with that, but I've experienced people who do, you know, and I've been riding with people who do, and it just messes up the entire mood. Like, it messes up their whole day. Like, somebody cut you off, and so you're going to give them the rest of your day. You're mad about being cut off. And then, you know, and so it's allowing the reaction to the action, right? And allowing yourself mentally to go to a place that is not true, where the enemy comes in and destroys goals, destroys passions, destroys, you know, life. Those types of, so it's not the action of the mistake. The mistake is the catalyst, right? That opens the door. But it's what we do with the mistake that is where I've kind of like learned and grown to be like, you know what? It's not that serious. It's really not that serious. Calm down. Don't blow it out of proportion. It ain't even that serious.
I love what you're saying. Something just hit me. It's true that people make mistakes, but sometimes they make choices. And it's really interesting how we frame it. Like, as you're talking about it, it hit me. My kids might have mistakenly forgot to clean their room. To me, it feels like they made a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do I do to fix it? I make the mistake of getting overly upset.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird how we think about that too. Like, we get upset and we feel self-righteous. Like, I get upset and I feel self-righteous. Like, well, I deserve to feel this way because I asked you. I feel disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even think about the fact that, like, actually yours is the mistake.
Yeah.
Right? Theirs is immaturity, right? Like, it's like, okay, or like something just didn't get done. That's fine.
Yeah.
Your reaction, fully under your control.
Mm-hmm.
And the mistake you made was you lost control.
Yeah.
But we're so upset with one mistake that we make another one. Like, two wrongs don't make it right. I mean, that old chestnut, that old adage or whatever, it's like, it's really strange how we do it. We compound it on instead of having patience where, like, we recognize, let me tell you, I can recognize all day I make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason I have this like terrible human gross part of me that's like, if my kids make a mistake, it's a purposeful disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's terrible. Like, they don't deserve that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just me wanting to be honored.
Yep.
It's my pride talking.
Yep.
And so the mistake I have is not acknowledging how prideful I am all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk to other people, just remembering all the time that I'm full of pride. And so when I speak, you have to put that aside.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about yourself being honored. It's about you honoring other people.
Yep.
And so, funny enough, we didn't even really mean to, but it spun right into the relational.
Yep.
Like, it all weaves together where the bigger mistake is not realizing your impact on other people.
Exactly.
Like, that's to me, I really feel like that's the biggest mistake we can make as humans, period, is just getting so lost in ourselves.
Yep.
And I would challenge you with this, Warren. Think about every relationship you've had with someone where, let's say it this way, you don't prefer that person.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like that. You don't prefer being around that person.
Yep.
That's not your preference. So I would imagine what those people have in common is that they have lost sight of their impact on you, and it's about them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's somebody that's angry, whether it's somebody that's having a good time. Sometimes you got that person that's always happy to be around, but they're always talking about their thing. And they have just totally lost sight of, like, if you only talk about you and we never get to like share stories together, and I never learn about you as a person, Warren, we don't have a friendship. I've just got a counseling session where you're listening and nodding at me. And then I'm like, talking about my life. And guess what? Those sessions ends really quick. You're at a party. You're just like, well, I got to go check my oven or, my fridge is running. I got to go catch it. Bye. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, nobody that I can't remember the last time that somebody was in relationship and like, man, what's great about my friendship with this person? They just talk the whole time. So good. It's so good. And I don't even think sometimes people realize they're making the mistake. Like, you're not allowing people in. You're either talking about yourself, you're pushing people away, you're being too sarcastic, you're being too, crude in your joking. Like, there's just so many like mistakes I have made in my relationships with people. I'm thankful for grace. I'm thankful for both people's grace and God's grace. For me, so many bridges burned, man. Lie, cheat, and steal, right? Like, that's like everybody's favorite 3 sins is like, and you can lie to people, you cheat them out of a good time, and you can steal all their joy. So you just don't want to do those things. And I think that's the biggest hurdle. Maybe is when we're thinking about mistakes, we think of like, well, make sure you don't spill your drink. Make sure that at the party, you wear the right clothes. It'd be a mistake to not be fashionable. But like, come on, the real mistake would be like not checking in on that friend who's quiet in the corner. The real mistake is like, actually, guys, why don't we all hang out and play a game we can all play together? Sometimes it's just including people, welcoming people, loving people. So that's the biggest mistake we are making on planet Earth right now, is not loving each other well enough. And so that's kind of my last point for the episode. Really, that's the biggest thing, is like, it would be a mistake for all of us not to try to love each other better.
Come on.
not to love each other more practically,
Yep.
more necessarily.
Mm,
Like it's so necessary to love people and have relationships with people and not hide away,
come on.
not run from, not damage
Mm,
purposely relationships.
yeah.
Like heal those things, build friendships,
Mhm.
do the right thing. And God just really blesses that thing.
Mm,
So anyway, that's what I would say. The mistake is not chasing and trying to build positive relationships with people.
come on.
That's the biggest mistake people make.
I like the vein
where's that
that
leave
you're
you at?
in. I like the
Thanks,
spot
man.
you're in right there. Just gonna take that vein you got right there, put an
Yeah.
IV in it, and just pump it up just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Just
Let's go.
give
We love a metaphor, bro.
give it some give
good.
it some liquid
That's
here,
really
man.
good.
So
Come on.
you talked about like people, right? I've just come to this connotation that there's two things that you can't replace on earth. That God has blessed us with and we should never take for granted. Number one, keeping God first place in our lives. We should realize that God gives us this resource called time that we can't purchase any more of it. We don't know how much we get. And when we're out, we can't go back. Wherever you spend it, you can't go back and get a refund. Whatever you do with your time, right? With God, the God given time that He's given you, whatever you do with it, when it's up and you spent it, it's up, right? And so I think we often make the mistake of not knowing what's most precious, and that's our time. The time that we have here that God has given us is precious. I'm so glad that we don't have to stay here forever. You know, as much as I love being an American, love my family, I have another home that is not made by man. And I know I'm just journeying through, but I'm taking advantage and I'm taking the time that I have here to make an impact and to love those around me and to show people the love of God. I take that very seriously, what I do with my time. I don't want to make a mistake of wasting what God has given me on something that's not worth that effort. Right.
Sure.
And so that connects to that relational piece, right? Because while we let things bother us, we let things upset us, I know people who, 90% of the time they're upset about something or they're complaining about something or something's not right or they have these goals and they're always working towards something that's over there, right? And that's good. But if you're always focused on down the road or you're focused on getting to somewhere, then you're losing the value of what is today. You're taking out a loan on tomorrow's time that you may not get. And so you're wasting today on tomorrow. And so I think it's a mistake when we allow these things to kind of control the way we move through life. Like we should regulate ourselves to understand the preciousness of time and not continue making the mistake of letting our emotions guide how we treat other people.
Yeah.
And that piece goes into the other most important thing I think that God has placed in our life, and that is people. We often take people for granted, like, especially in relationship. I know people in families, in siblings, in marriages who treat people that they just met better than the people that they live with. And it's shocking because you've now taken for granted the one thing that God has blessed you with that cannot be replaced. People are not promised to us. If you share your life with somebody, if you have children, if you have a mother, brother, father, sister, these people are not promised to you. They are not a given. They are not guaranteed. They can be here today, gone tomorrow, or they can choose to separate themselves from your life. So I think that it's a mistake to allow things that really don't matter for us to allow those to damage our relationships with people that God has entrusted us to love and care for. We take things way too seriously, and what we don't take seriously is our time and our people. And so I invite people to examine those things. How do you treat your time and how do you treat your people? Right. And maybe that kind of gives you a better outlook of how you move through life and how you value what's important, right? Given that God is first place in your life, how do you treat your time? And then how do you treat your people? And all these other things that happen in your life, like, it won't really matter how clean your house is or how cut your grass is or how much success you had in life or how much money you made if you spent most of your time wasting it on nonsense and you treated the people in your life not well to obtain all the rest of that stuff. Right. And so I believe that God has put us here for a purpose, and that purpose is to bring him glory and to share his love with other people. And so I don't want to make the mistake of taking for granted what God has given me. And so I aligned myself with a lot of things we talked about today, and just knowing that, you know, don't let the mistake impact your mental. Don't let it impact like how you continue to ruminate on the failures, and let it control your mood that affects other people, both on purpose and not on purpose. Get some of those things in check, and I guarantee your life will look way different than it looks today.
That was awesome, man. Line up your time, line up your people. It's funny, line up your time for people.
Come on.
I mean, wouldn't that be interesting if we all did that?
Come on.
Like, if you line up your time for other people, this is what I tell my kids sometimes too. If you care about other people, you will not have to worry about caring about yourself.
Let's go.
Because you'll end up on somebody else's list.
Oh, yeah.
Man. Like, people care about people that care.
Oh, yeah.
Or, you know, let's put it on a t-shirt.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like, that's just being real. Like, I think when you know somebody cares, that's where you build relationships. That's where you can trust that person.
Yeah.
You know who that person is. You know who what their character is, but you also know what their relationship with God is.
Absolutely.
You know what their relationship with other people is. Like, as you get to know people better, and you could trust that. You could build something together.
Yeah.
And so when you're building something together, that's not a mistake. Like, you could trust that's not a mistake. That's a God thing, bringing people together.
Yeah.
And so lean into that all day long. I think you will never go wrong. It will never be a mistake to live your life for other people, sharing Jesus with other people.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a way you can guarantee that you haven't made a mistake. So, Warren, my man, I appreciate your time, your energy, and just all your insights all the time, man. It's so good. I appreciate you working through the middle of the episode. We had all the phone calls, all the mistakes happening. It was awesome. I kind of love it.
Yeah.
I think that's like a practical example.
All those pop-up mistakes in filming, right? Like, what?
It was wild. It was wild.
That almost never happens, man. We both got a phone call in the same episode.
I was going to say, I mean, we've done so many episodes together, so much time together.
On cue, right?
And rarely do we have mistakes like that. And then on the mistakes episode, we have one. I kind of love it.
We're going to leave it in, aren't we?
We are. I feel like I'm not going to edit a whole lot out, you know? So
it's the part I was choking. The phone was ringing. I was choking. I'm like, what's going on over here?
You were like, can I drink water? Can I get over here? Like, hold on. I got to go do 3 backflips. I'm so sorry. I'll be right back.
Out of control, man.
Anyway,
out of control.
That was really cool.
Man, I'm going to pray us out. But man, you made a great point there, man. About lining up your time for people. And dude, I'm going to say to you, man, you've been an amazing friend to me. I know I've called you on situations and man, you were like heading into a meeting and you were like, hey, hold on, let me cancel the meeting. Let's talk. That's lining up your time for people, man. I mean, that's so much value, right? Like pushing things that we're like, we put so much value on these things, but putting value on people, man. And I hope I reciprocate that same love and respect for you, man. Cause that's the way I want to love people. That's the way I want to show the love of God, by prioritizing them and making room and time for them. Because the best thing you can give somebody is your time. So thank you, sir, for your time. And
you're welcome.
I'll pray us out, man.
Good. Let's do it.
Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you, God, Lord, that you allow us to be able to talk about your goodness, Lord. And Lord, today I pray, Lord, that as we examine some of the mistakes we make, God, how we align our life with you, God, that you help us to walk through these things and to live our life for you, Lord, to give you our troubles, Lord, to give you our pain, Lord, to give you the things that we don't understand, God, so that you may turn those things into things for your good. Father, Lord, today I pray that something was said, Lord, that may impact the world, Lord, that may touch their lives, to help them, Lord, to not continue to make mistakes, but to seek you, God, and to turn from the things that they're doing and turn to you, God. Lord, I thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with Jason. And I pray that everyone hears this podcast is blessed. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So good, man.
So good.
So good.
So good,
dude.
man.
Well, you're the coolest. I love
You
it.
the man.
I love it. All right, man. We'll see you next time, man.
Yes, boss. Let's go.